I was 83 years old when my son smiled at me across the breakfast table and said, "Mom, I found a place where people can help you." He smiled while he said it. That was the part that hurt the most. If he had looked guilty, maybe I could have prepared myself. If he had looked sad, maybe I could have believed he had no choice. Instead, he smiled. I slowly stirred the oatmeal in my bowl. My hands were not as steady as they once were, but my mind was still clear. "What kind of place?" I asked. "A beautiful nursing home," he replied. "They have nurses all day, activities, friends your age. It will be better for you." Better. That word stayed in my head for the rest of the day. My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am 83 years old. I spent 46 years married to the kindest man I ever knew. My husband, Richard, worked as an electrician. I stayed home while our son, Daniel, was growing up. Later, I worked at our local library for almost 20 years because I loved books more than anything except my family. Richard died 9 years ago. Since then, the house had become too quiet. Sometimes I still reached across the bed in the middle of the night, expecting to find his warm hand. Instead, there was only cold fabric. Maybe you have felt something like that. At this age, silence feels louder than noise. Daniel had asked me to move in with him 2 years earlier. "You should not be alone anymore, Mom," he had said. His wife, Melissa, agreed. "It will be good for everyone." I believed them. I sold the little house Richard and I had spent our whole lives paying for. Every room held a memory. The kitchen where Daniel learned to bake cookies with his father. The front porch where Richard proposed to me after church one Sunday. The oak tree where we measured Daniel's height every birthday. Leaving that house felt like saying goodbye to another member of the family. But I told myself I was gaining something more important, more time with my son. For a little while, everything seemed fine. I folded laundry, watered flowers, cooked dinner whenever Melissa worked late. Sometimes I baked Daniel's favorite apple pie. He always thanked me, at least in the beginning. Then life slowly changed, not all at once, little by little. The conversations became shorter. Family dinners became quieter. Everyone looked at their phones. Sometimes I sat with them for an hour without anyone asking how I was feeling. I started eating earlier by myself because they were always busy. Nobody said I had to. It simply happened. That is how loneliness enters a home. It does not knock. It quietly finds an empty chair. One evening I heard Daniel come home after work. His truck pulled into the driveway just after 7. I smiled. I thought maybe tonight we would watch one of those old Western movies he loved as a boy. Instead, he walked past my bedroom. I heard him whispering in the hallway with Melissa. "I cannot keep doing this. We need our own lives. She deserves professional care." Their voices became softer. Then the bedroom door closed. I stood there in the hallway holding a basket of clean towels. I quietly returned to my room before they noticed me. That night I cried into my pillow without making a sound. I did not want anyone to hear. The next morning, I acted as though nothing had happened. Old mothers become very good at pretending. We pretend we are not lonely. We pretend we are not scared. Most of all, we pretend we do not hear conversations that break our hearts. A few weeks later, Daniel drove me to see the nursing home. "It is only to look," he said. The building was clean. The gardens were beautiful. The staff smiled. Everything looked perfect, almost too perfect. An elderly woman sat near the entrance staring out the window. No visitors, no flowers, no conversation, just waiting. I wondered who she was waiting for. Maybe nobody. Maybe someone who had stopped coming. When we left, Daniel seemed relieved. "What do you think?" he asked. "It is very nice," I answered, because I did not want him to feel guilty. 3 days later, he packed my suitcase. He folded my sweaters carefully, placed my family photographs into a small box, even Richard's old pocket watch, the watch he carried every single day for 40 years. "Do not forget this," Daniel said. His voice sounded almost cheerful, as though he were preparing me for a vacation. Melissa hugged me before we left. "We will visit every weekend." I smiled. "I know." But something inside me whispered, "No, they will not." The drive took less than 40 minutes. Neither of us spoke much. I watched familiar streets disappear through the window. The grocery store where Richard always bought too many peaches, the church where Daniel was baptized, the diner where we celebrated every anniversary, one by one. They faded behind us. When we arrived, a nurse welcomed me warmly. She was kind. Her name was Grace. She helped carry my suitcase. Daniel signed several papers at the front desk. He barely looked at me. When everything was finished, he walked me to my room. It was small, one bed, one dresser, one window overlooking a quiet garden. He placed my photographs on the nightstand. "I think you will like it here." I nodded. He hugged me quickly. "I have to get back before traffic gets bad." That sentence hurt more than anything else. Not, "I will miss you," not, "I love you." Traffic. He kissed my forehead. "I will call tomorrow." Then he walked away. I stood by the window and watched his truck disappear through the front gate. I kept watching long after it was gone, as if staring hard enough could bring him back. Grace quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. "It is always hardest on the first day." I forced a smile. "I will be all right." She nodded gently. "I hope so." That evening, I unpacked my clothes, placed Richard's watch beside my bed, set our old wedding photograph on the dresser. Then I noticed something strange. Tucked inside the back of the picture frame was a folded yellow envelope. I had never seen it before. My hands began to shake. Across the front, written in handwriting I recognized instantly, were 5 words: "Open only if I am gone." It was Richard's handwriting, and somehow, after 9 years, his final message had just found me. For a long moment I could not breathe. My fingers trembled so much that I almost dropped the envelope. Richard had been gone for 9 years. 9 long years. I had cried enough tears to fill a river. I had learned to cook for one. I had learned to sleep without hearing his gentle snore. I had learned to wake up every morning and keep living because I believed that was what he would have wanted. But I had never seen this letter. I slowly sat on the edge of the bed. The room around me disappeared. It was only me and Richard's handwriting. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The paper had turned slightly yellow with age. I recognized the blue ink immediately. Richard always used the same fountain pen. I took a deep breath and began reading. "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I have already been gone for some time. I hope you have laughed again. I hope someone still makes you smile. And I hope you never believe you are alone." My eyes filled with tears. It felt as if he were sitting beside me. His voice echoed inside my heart. "I know our son loves you, but people change. Sometimes life hardens them. Sometimes they make decisions they will regret. Promise me one thing. Never believe your worth depends on how others treat you. You were my greatest blessing. You always will be." I pressed the letter against my chest. For the first time since arriving, I let myself cry. Not quietly, not politely. I cried the way only a widow understands. The door opened softly. Grace stepped inside. "Oh," she stopped. "I am sorry." I wiped my face. "It is my husband's letter." She smiled gently. "Then take all the time you need." Before leaving, she quietly placed a cup of warm tea on my table. That tiny act of kindness meant more than she could have known. Sometimes strangers notice our pain faster than family. The next morning, I joined the other residents for breakfast. There were about 20 people sitting around small tables. Some chatted happily, some stared into space. Others slowly pushed eggs around their plates without eating. Across from me sat a cheerful woman with bright white hair. "I am Margaret," she said.
I have been here 3 years. I smiled. Eleanor, she reached across the table. First week? Is it that obvious? She laughed. You still keep looking toward the parking lot. I looked away. She had noticed. I did the same thing. She stirred her coffee. For almost 6 months. Her words settled heavily between us. After breakfast, she showed me the garden. The flowers were beautiful. Birds sang from the maple trees. Everything looked peaceful, yet underneath the beauty, there was sadness. Every bench carried someone waiting for visitors, waiting for birthdays, waiting for holidays, waiting for phone calls that sometimes never came. That afternoon, Grace knocked on my door. You have a visitor. My heart jumped. Daniel. It had to be Daniel. I hurried to the lobby. Instead, a volunteer from the local church stood there carrying homemade cookies. She smiled warmly.
I baked these for everyone, I thanked her. She had never met me before, yet she had come. My own son had not. That evening, I kept checking my phone. No call. The next morning, still nothing. By the third day, I finally told myself he must simply be busy. People have lives, jobs, responsibilities. I repeated those words over and over, not because I believed them, because they hurt less than the truth. 1 week passed, then another. Every afternoon around 4 o'clock, I sat near the front window, the same window where I had first seen that lonely woman. Now, I had become her. Every time a car entered the driveway, my heart raced. Every time someone else's family walked through the door, I smiled for them, then quietly looked away. One afternoon, Margaret sat beside me. You are waiting for someone. My son. She nodded slowly. So was I. I looked at her. He stopped coming. He passed away 12 years ago. I felt terrible. I am so sorry. She squeezed my hand. My daughter is still alive. I smiled. Then she visits? Margaret looked toward the parking lot. No. That single word carried years of heartbreak. Maybe you understand this feeling. Sometimes people leave long before they disappear. A few days later, Grace asked if I would help organize books in the recreation room. You worked in a library, right? I smiled for the first time in days. Yes. I thought you might enjoy it. I spent the afternoon arranging novels, history books, mysteries, old cookbooks. It felt strangely familiar. For a few hours, I almost forgot where I was. Residents began stopping by. Some asked for recommendations. Others simply wanted someone to talk to. One gentleman borrowed the same Western novel Richard had loved. Another woman asked me to read aloud because her eyesight had become poor. Little by little, people started calling me the library lady. It made me laugh. I had not laughed like that in months. That night, Grace smiled. You seem happier. I forgot how much I missed books. She nodded. Sometimes purpose finds us again. Those words stayed with me. Purpose. Maybe I still had one. Then, exactly 19 days after Daniel left me there, my phone finally rang. I nearly dropped it trying to answer. Hello? There was silence. Then I heard Daniel's voice. Hi, Mom. I smiled through tears. I have been worried. I know. I thought something had happened. He sighed. I have been busy. Busy. Again. We talked for barely 4 minutes. He asked if I needed anything. I wanted to say, I need my son. Instead, I said, no, sweetheart. I am all right. He sounded distracted, as if answering emails while talking to me. Before hanging up, he said something strange. Oh, someone might call you soon. What do you mean? I cannot explain right now. The line went quiet. Then, click. The call ended. I stared at the phone. Someone might call me? Who? I knew almost no one anymore. The next morning passed quietly. After lunch, I returned to the little library. I had just finished placing a novel back on the shelf when Grace hurried inside. Eleanor. Her face looked pale. There's a phone call for you. I smiled. Daniel? She slowly shook her head. No. Then who is it? She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. I do not know. But they said they have been searching for you for almost 10 years. My heart began pounding. Searching? For me? Who on earth had been looking for an 83-year-old woman for an entire decade? I picked up the receiver. A calm man's voice spoke the moment I said hello. Mrs. Eleanor Brooks? Yes. My name is Michael Lawson. I believe I have something that your late husband wanted you to have. And in that instant, everything I believed about Richard, about our marriage, and even about why my son had suddenly sent me away, began to unravel. I held the phone so tightly that my fingers started to ache. For a few seconds, I could not answer. My husband? I finally whispered. Yes, the man replied. I knew Richard Brooks. My heart skipped. Richard had been gone for 9 years. How could someone I had never heard of know him? There must be some mistake. I do not think so, the man said gently. Your husband asked me to contact you one day. I have been trying to find you for years. I closed my eyes. But why now? I will explain. His voice was calm, patient. My name is Michael Lawson. I was your husband's attorney during the last year of his life. Attorney? Richard had never mentioned an attorney. He handled everything himself. Bills, insurance, taxes. He always said, simple lives are easier to protect. I found your old address, Michael continued. The house had already been sold. Then I learned you had moved. It took years to track you down. I felt my knees weaken. Grace quietly brought me a chair. I sat down without taking my eyes off the phone. What is this about? There was a brief silence. Then Michael asked a question that completely caught me off guard. Mrs. Brooks, has your son recently placed you in a nursing home? I froze. Yes. I was afraid of that. A cold chill ran through my body. What do you mean? Because your husband expected this might happen. No, I almost laughed. Richard would never think that about Daniel. I wish I were wrong. Michael's voice sounded heavy. Your husband loved your son deeply, but during his illness he noticed changes. I remembered those final months. Richard had become quieter. Sometimes I caught him looking at Daniel with sadness. When I asked what was wrong, he always smiled. Nothing to worry about. Maybe it had not been nothing. Mrs. Brooks, Michael continued, your husband created a trust. A trust? Yes. He wanted to make absolutely certain that you would always be financially secure. I felt confused. We never had much money. You had more than you realized. I looked out the window. The garden blurred through my tears. Michael explained everything slowly. Years before retiring, Richard had invested small amounts every month. Nothing risky, nothing flashy, just steady investments. He never talked about them because he wanted them to become a surprise. Over decades, they had quietly grown, much more than either Daniel or I had ever imagined. Richard left very clear instructions. What instructions? Michael opened a file. I could hear papers turning. He wrote, if Eleanor is living safely in her own home or with family who truly care for her, the trust remains untouched until her passing. I swallowed hard. But if she is abandoned, neglected, or placed somewhere against her wishes, his voice became even softer. The trust immediately transfers entirely into her personal control. I stopped breathing. He actually wrote that? Word for word. Tears rolled down my face. Richard, even after death, he had still been trying to protect me. Michael continued. He also instructed me to personally verify your situation before releasing anything. How much are we talking about? There was another pause. Then he quietly answered, "A little over $3 million. The room disappeared. $3 million? Richard? My gentle husband who drove the same pickup truck for 18 years, who repaired old lamps instead of buying new ones, who packed homemade lunches every day to save money." I covered my mouth. "I do not understand." "He wanted freedom for you," Michael replied. "He once told me, money cannot stop death, but maybe it can stop loneliness." Those words broke something inside me. I could almost hear Richard saying them. That evening, I sat alone in my room holding his letter. I whispered into the silence, "You were still taking care of me." The next morning, Michael arrived in person. He looked to be in his early 60s, gray hair, kind eyes. He carried a leather briefcase that had seen many years of use. When he shook my hand, he smiled. "Richard talked about you constantly." "What did he say?" Michael laughed softly. "He said he married a woman who made every ordinary day feel like Christmas." I cried all over again. Nobody had spoken about me that way in years. We spent nearly 3 hours reviewing documents. Every page carried Richard's signature. Every instruction was precise. There was even a handwritten note attached to one folder. For Eleanor only. I opened it carefully. "My love, if this file is ever opened, then life did not unfold the way I prayed it would. Please do not waste another day believing you are a burden. You never were. Go somewhere that brings you peace. Help someone if you can. Laugh again, and never let guilt steal the years you still have. Love always, Richard." I held the note against my heart. For the first time since arriving at the nursing home, I smiled without forcing it. Michael looked around the room. "This place seems kind." "It is. But it is not home." "No, it is not." He nodded. "When everything is finalized, you may leave whenever you choose." "Whenever I choose." I had not heard those words in a very long time. For months, every decision had belonged to someone else. That afternoon, I walked through the garden. Margaret joined me. "You look different today." "Do I?" "You are standing taller." I laughed. "I think Richard just reminded me who I am." She smiled without asking another question. Some friendships do not need explanations. That evening, I called Daniel. He answered after several rings. "Hi, Mom. I need to see you." His voice sounded uneasy. "Is everything okay? I think it is time we talked." "About what?" "About your father." Silence. Long silence. Finally, he answered. "When?" "Tomorrow. I will come." As I ended the call, I noticed Grace watching me from the hallway. She smiled. The words settled over us like heavy rain. For the first time in my life, I could not recognize my own son, not because he looked different, because desperation had turned him into someone I had never imagined. "I hated myself," he whispered, "every single day. I wanted to visit. I wanted to call. But every time I thought about seeing you, I remembered why I had brought you here." "So you stayed away?" He nodded. I was ashamed. I reached into my purse and removed Richard's last letter. "I think your father understood something." Daniel looked at me. He knew people can make terrible choices when fear takes over. I handed him the letter. He also believed people could choose differently. Daniel read it slowly. By the time he reached the final sentence, tears were falling freely. "I failed him." "You failed yourself," I answered gently, "but that does not have to be the end of your story." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel looked up. "I do not deserve your forgiveness." "No, you do not." His shoulders dropped. "But forgiveness is not something people earn." He stared at me. "It is something we decide to give." I reached across the table, just as I had done when he was a frightened little boy. I held his hand. I forgive you." He broke down completely, not quietly, not politely. He cried like a child who had been carrying far too much for far too long. People in the hallway politely looked away. Grace quietly closed the visitor room door. She understood that some moments belong only to a family. Over the next several weeks, everything changed. The trust was transferred exactly as Richard had planned. Michael handled every document, every signature, every legal detail. When it was finished, he smiled. "Mrs. Brooks, no," he corrected himself. "Eleanor, you are free to do whatever you wish." For the first time in years, the choice was mine. I could have bought a large house, a luxury car, anything I wanted. Instead, I bought something much simpler, a small white cottage near a lake about 30 minutes from town. It had a tiny front porch, blue shutters, a garden that needed love, and a kitchen filled with morning sunlight. The moment I walked inside, I felt peace. Not because it was expensive, because it felt like home. But I did something else, something Richard would have smiled about. I created a small foundation in his name. Every year it helps older people who have been forgotten by their families. Some need medicine, some need legal advice, some simply need someone to visit. Loneliness cannot always be cured, but it can be shared, and sharing makes it lighter. I also hired Grace, not as my nurse, as the director of the foundation. When I offered her the position, she looked shocked. "Why me?" "Because kindness cannot be taught. You already have it," she accepted with tears in her eyes. Margaret became my first lunch guest in the new cottage. Every Thursday we sat on the porch drinking tea. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we simply watched the birds. At our age, comfort does not always need words. Daniel visited often, not because of money. The trust made certain he could never control a single dollar. That had been Richard's final protection. Daniel came because he wanted to rebuild something much more valuable: trust. It happened slowly. One conversation, one shared meal, one honest apology at a time. Some wounds leave scars forever, but scars are different from open wounds. They remind us where we have been. They do not have to decide where we are going. One autumn evening, Daniel and I stood beside Richard's grave. The maple trees were covered in red and gold leaves. "I wish I could tell Dad I am sorry," Daniel said. I smiled gently. "I think you just did." He looked at me. "Do you think he would forgive me?" I looked up at the quiet sky. "I believe your father loved you too much to stop hoping." Daniel placed a small white rose beside the headstone. Then we stood there together in silence, the kind of silence that no longer felt empty. As we walked back toward the car, I slipped Richard's old pocket watch into my coat pocket. It still worked. Steady, faithful, just like the man who had carried it. Sometimes people ask me what changed my life. Was it the $3 million? No. Money gave me choices. But it was not what saved me. What saved me was discovering that even after death, love can still protect us. That one phone call did not make me rich. It reminded me that I had never been worthless. At 83, I learned something I wish every family understood. Growing old does not mean a parent needs less love. It means they need it more. If you still have someone who waits for your phone call, do not make them wait another day, because one conversation can change a life, and sometimes it can save a heart that was quietly breaking.